In this video, we're going to be using substitution to solve this system of equations. Now, you might be looking at this saying, I think it would be easier to use subtraction method to solve this system of equations. And you'd be right, it is easier. However, this video, we're going to show you how to use the substitution method, okay? So when I'm looking at my two equations, I've got equation number 1 and equation number 2. I think the easiest thing to do would take equation number 2, isolate it for x, and then use that x and substitute that back into equation number 1. Then I can solve for my y, and then I'll use that value and put it back into my modified equation number 2 and solve for x. I know that sounded complicated, so let's get started. Okay, so we're going to start with equation 2, and we're going to now refer to this as equation 2a, okay? Because I'm going to start modifying it. So I start with x minus 2y equals 11. Now I want the x by itself, okay? So I have this minus 2y here. If I do the opposite action, so I add 2y, I'm going to get rid of this, right? It's going to cancel itself out. So I can add 2y. Now remember, I need to do that to both sides of my equation, right? I can't just do that to one side of the equation. Or now I have a totally different equation that I'm dealing with. Okay, let's simplify. So the negative 2y and the positive 2y, they cancel, and I'm left with x is equal to 11 plus 2y. So it's pretty simple. I have now completely isolated my x, and I can go ahead and substitute it into my equation 1, okay? So we're going to just call that equation 1, and I'm going to substitute this value here, 11 plus 2y, right in for the x, and then I'm going to expand everything out and simplify and solve for y. Okay, so what do I have? I have minus 7 times 11 plus 2y. So notice I put that right where the x was. Then I'm going to have minus 2y is equal to negative 13. Okay, so let's expand. When I say expand, what I mean is I'm going to take this negative 7 and I'm going to multiply it through this bracket. So negative 7 times 11 is negative 77. Negative 7 times positive 2y is going to be negative 14y. Minus 2y is equal to negative 13. Okay, so first thing I want to do is I want to combine these two like terms here. So for now, I'm just going to rewrite the negative 77. Combining these two like terms, negative 14y minus 2y is going to be negative 16y. And that's going to equal negative 13. Now I'm ready to move this negative 77. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to add 77 to both sides, okay? For the same reasoning as before when I was trying to move something. If this is negative 77 or minus 77, if I do the opposite action, which is adding 77 to both sides, it will cancel on the side that I'm trying to move it from, okay? In this case, the left-hand side. So 77 minus 77 is 0, and I'm left with negative 16y. And then on my right-hand side, I have negative 13 plus 77, which leaves me with 64. Now, one more simplification to solve for y. Same thing, opposite action, opposite operation. I've got negative 16 is multiplied by y. So if I divide both sides by negative 16, here on my left-hand side, negative 16 divided by negative 16 is just 1. 1 times y is just y. Y will be equal to, now 64 over negative 16. This is a fraction, but it's also a division. Okay, so a fraction is just a division we have not performed yet. So 64 divided by negative 16 is simply going to be negative 4. Okay, so we know our value for y. Here we go. Now we need to find our value for x. Now the easiest way to find our value for x is simply going to be to take this, right? Our modified equation 2, and we're going to say x is equal to 11 plus 2. We have this y value of -4. Okay, so see how I'm using both equations? I'm going back and forth. That's how we use substitution to solve a system of equations. It's a little bit messy, but it always works. It just, as you can see, we have to keep going, right? It could be a lot of steps. Okay, so let's keep simplifying. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm just going to recopy my x, and I'm going to copy down my 11 because the first action I need to do based on order of operations is I need to take care of this multiplication here. Okay, so I've got this 2 multiplied by -4. That's going to give me -8. And then I can do my final operation or simplification, 11 minus 8, which is simply 3. And there we go. I have solved my system of equations. I found that x is equal to 3 and y is equal to -4. Now, the only other thing you might want to do to verify, and we're not going to do it in this video, but if you wanted to make sure for sure that the answers you found or the solutions you found were valid, then what you would do is you would substitute both of them into both equations, not just one equation, but both equations. And you would verify that your left hand and your right hand side were equal to each other. Okay? And if they are, then the answers are true and valid. But they're only true and valid if they work in both. Okay? So once again, our answers are x equals 3 and y equals -4. If you would like to learn how to quickly study for your GED exam online and get a new resume, then visit testprepskills.com.